In 1952, a stranger knocked on your grandmother's door at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. She let him in. 20 minutes later, she'd agreed to buy a $289 vacuum cleaner, 3 weeks of her husband's salary, on a payment plan that would take 2 years to finish. And here's the strange part. She thanked him. Not because she wanted the vacuum, she already had one, but because saying no to a man standing in your living room, smiling at you, demonstrating his product on your carpet, was somehow impossible. This wasn't a scam. It was an industry, and for 50 years, it was one of the most powerful economic forces in America. Then it vanished almost overnight. Door-to-door selling didn't start as predatory capitalism. It started as the only capitalism rural America had. In the 1920s, most Americans didn't live near stores. No malls, no shopping centers. If you lived on a farm or in a small town, you ordered from catalogs or you waited for someone to come to you. That someone was the traveling salesman. He sold everything: brushes, brooms, pots, pans, whatever fit in his case. He'd show up, demonstrate the product, take your order, come back next month with delivery. It worked because it had to. There was no alternative. But then one company saw something bigger. They realized the front door wasn't just a delivery point. It was a sales weapon. Enter the Fuller Brush Company. Alfred Fuller founded his company in 1906 with a simple idea: sell brushes door to door, but make it systematic. Not random, not casual, systematic. He invented the territory system. Each salesman got a specific neighborhood. He worked that area repeatedly, built relationships, became familiar, became trusted. Fuller created the sales script, not suggestions, a script, word for word, what to say, when to say it, how to position your body, where to put the sample case. He pioneered the foot in the door technique, literally. Get invited inside. Once you're in the house, the sale becomes exponentially easier. And most importantly, he made it commission only. No salary, no safety net. You sold or you starved. By 1920, Fuller had 260 salesmen. By 1950, he had 20,000. This wasn't a company, it was a system. And the system worked because it understood something fundamental about human psychology. People can't say no to your face the same way they ignore an ad in a newspaper. The 1940s and 1950s were the peak. Door-to-door selling was everywhere. Fuller Brush, Avon, Kirby vacuums, Electrolux, Encyclopedia Britannica, Cutco knives, Tupperware. An estimated 2 million Americans worked as door-to-door salespeople in 1950. The industry generated $5.4 billion annually, equivalent to $67 billion today. Entire suburban neighborhoods were built on commission checks. Salesmen who succeeded bought houses, cars, sent kids to college, the successful ones anyway. For every Fuller Brush man making $15,000 a year, there were 50 making $800. Because commission only means most people fail, and the company doesn't pay for failure. But the mythology persisted: work hard. Master the pitch, anyone can make it. The American dream, one doorbell at a time. Here's how the system actually worked. You applied to become a Fuller Brush man. They didn't call it a job interview. They called it training. They taught you the script, every word, every gesture, where to stand, how to smile, when to pause. They taught you the demonstration, how to dump a small pile of dirt on someone's carpet, their carpet in their home, then vacuum it up with your product to prove it works better than whatever they already own. They taught you the close. Never ask, do you want to buy this? Ask, would you prefer the red model or the blue model? They taught you payment plans. Break a $300 vacuum into $12.50 per month. Suddenly it's not $300 anymore. It's less than $1 a day. And they taught you territory management. Visit every house in your zone, Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Knock on 50 doors a day. If 48 say no, you need 2 yeses to hit quota. You weren't an employee, you were a contractor, which meant no health insurance, no paid time off, no unemployment benefits, no labor protections. You bought your own inventory, you paid for your own gas, you absorbed your own losses, and if you quit, the company owed you nothing. The Federal Trade Commission would later call this model a legally structured gamble with a house edge, but in 1950 it was just called business. The thing about door-to-door selling is that it required acting like certain absurd things were normal. Vacuum salesmen dumping dirt on your floor, in your house, that you just cleaned. And somehow this was polite. Encyclopedia salesmen convincing farmers in rural Kansas that they desperately needed a 24-volume set of reference books they'd never open. The Avon lady showing up every 2 weeks like clockwork, calling herself your friend, knowing 30 other women on the same block she also called friends. Tupperware parties where your neighbor invited you over, fed you snacks, then spent an hour pressuring you to buy plastic containers you didn't need because saying no would make you the rude one. And people bought it, not because they wanted it, but because the social pressure of face-to-face interaction made refusal feel cruel. You'd return a defective product to a store without guilt, but returning something to the man who sat in your living room, shook your hand, and smiled at your kids, that felt personal. So you kept it. A 1958 market research study found that door-to-door purchases had a 61% buyer's regret rate. People knew they'd been manipulated. They just couldn't figure out how to stop it while it was happening. The industry loved to talk about its success stories. The Fuller Brush man who retired at 45, the Avon lady who bought a Cadillac with her commissions. They didn't talk about the other 95%, the salesman working 80-hour weeks for $60, walking 10 miles a day in cheap shoes, skipping meals to save money, sleeping in their cars between territories, the ones who bought $500 of inventory on credit, sold $200, and ended up in debt. The families where Dad worked door to door and came home angry every night because he'd knocked on 70 doors and made 2 sales and the math wasn't working. The housewives who bought things they couldn't afford because the salesman wouldn't leave until they signed the payment plan. The FTC received over 11,000 complaints about door-to-door sales practices in 1962 alone. Most went unresolved. Because how do you prove you were pressured? How do you prove you felt uncomfortable saying no in your own home? You can't, so you paid the installments and hated yourself a little more each month. And the successful salesmen, the ones who made it, they weren't better people. They were just better at ignoring the discomfort they caused, because that's what the job required. The ability to walk into a stranger's home, create artificial urgency, manufacture need, and leave with a signed contract. Some people called it salesmanship, others called it socially acceptable manipulation. Turns out, society eventually stopped finding it acceptable. The first crack appeared in the late 1950s, and it wasn't economic. It was architectural. Suburbs were designed differently. Front doors faced the street. But families started using back doors and garage entrances. The front door became decorative. Strangers knocking felt intrusive. Then came the second crack: shopping malls. In 1956, the first enclosed suburban mall opened in Minnesota. By 1965, there were 1,500 malls across America. Suddenly, you didn't need the salesman to bring products to you. You could browse, compare, leave without buying. No one would follow you to your car. The third crack: women entering the workforce. In 1950, 34% of women worked outside the home. By 1970, it was 43%. By 1980, 51%, which meant no one was home at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday to answer the door. Door-to-door selling required the same conditions as the 1920s: isolated households, stay-at-home women, limited shopping options. All 3 were disappearing, but the industry didn't adapt. They doubled down. By the 1970s, door-to-door companies were in denial. Fuller Brush hired more salesmen, expanded territories, increased quotas. Kirby started selling vacuums that cost $4,200 in today's dollars for a vacuum. Encyclopedia Britannica targeted lower-income families with aggressive financing. $1,200 for books you'd never read, paid over 3 years at 18% interest. The tactics got more aggressive. Salesmen were trained to overcome objections with psychological pressure techniques that bordered on coercion. The FTC started receiving complaints about salesmen who wouldn't leave, who'd stay for 2 hours, who'd imply the husband would be angry if the wife didn't buy. In 1974, the FTC enacted the cooling-off rule. Consumers had 3 days to cancel any door-to-door purchase over $25. The industry fought it, called it un-American, said it would destroy small businesses. It passed anyway, and it helped, but not enough. Because the real problem wasn't the law, it was culture. By 1980, inviting a stranger into your home wasn't normal hospitality, it was a risk. Crime had risen, suburbs had become more isolated, neighbors didn't know each other, and a knock on the door wasn't opportunity anymore, it was suspicion. 3 things killed door-to-door selling. First, Walmart. The first Walmart supercenter opened in 1988. It sold everything a door-to-door salesman sold, but 40% cheaper, with no pressure, no commission, and you could return it tomorrow. Why buy a $300 vacuum from a stranger when Walmart sells one for $89? Second, telemarketing. If you're going to interrupt someone at home, why walk 10 miles when you can call 1,000 people from a desk? Companies shifted resources from foot traffic to phone banks. Cheaper, scalable, more efficient, and equally hated. Third, the internet. By 2000, you could research products, compare prices, read reviews, and order from home. The salesman's knowledge advantage vanished. Why trust his pitch when you can Google Best Vacuum 2000 and read 500 opinions? Door-to-door selling went from essential to obsolete in 20 years. Fuller Brush filed for bankruptcy in 2012. Encyclopedia Britannica stopped printing physical books in 2010. Avon, once valued at $12 billion, declared bankruptcy in 2024. The industry didn't die from regulation. It died from irrelevance. Right now, in 2025, there are still people doing this job. Not many, but they exist. Kirby vacuum salesmen still knock on doors in rural areas. They still do the demo, still dump dirt on carpets, still charge $2,500 for a machine you can't return because you signed the contract. A 2019 investigation found that the average Kirby salesman earns $400 per month. Many work 60-hour weeks, most quit within 6 months. But here's the thing, the ones still doing it aren't selling vacuums. They're selling to people who can't say no. Elderly people, immigrants with limited English, people in isolated rural areas who don't online shop. They're selling to the same demographic that's vulnerable to phone scams. Because the psychology is identical. Create urgency, apply pressure, close before they can think. It's not illegal, it's just predatory. And when you ask former door-to-door salesmen what it was like, most say the same thing. I hated it, but I needed the money. The ones who succeeded say, I was good at it, but I wouldn't want my kids doing it. The industry survives in the cracks. In places the internet hasn't fully reached, in demographics that haven't learned to say no yet, but it's dying, slowly, inevitably. And when it's fully gone, we'll remember it the way we remember payphones. Something that used to be everywhere, that used to matter, that we're vaguely relieved we don't need anymore. At its peak in 1950, 2 million Americans worked in door-to-door sales. That's 1 in 75 people. The industry generated $5.4 billion annually, 0.7% of the entire US economy. By 2020, fewer than 100,000 people worked door-to-door. The industry generated $4.1 billion, now 0.02% of the economy, a 99% collapse. The FTC estimates that between 1950 and 1980, Americans spent over $200 billion on door-to-door purchases adjusted for inflation. A significant portion involved buyer's regret. A 1978 congressional study found that 34% of door-to-door sales involved some form of deceptive practice. Not illegal, just deceptive. And here's the strange part. Nobody misses it. No one's nostalgic for the Fuller Brush man the way they're nostalgic for soda fountains or drive-in theaters, because door-to-door selling was never about community. It was about access. And once that access became intrusive, it became unwelcome. We traded one kind of manipulation for another. The door-to-door salesman pressured you in person. The algorithm pressures you online. He had a script. The website has A/B tested copy. He wouldn't leave until you signed. The app won't stop sending notifications until you subscribe. He made you feel rude for saying no. The company makes you feel like you're missing out. The psychology didn't disappear. It just moved. The difference is the algorithm doesn't knock. It doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't care if you're home. It's always there, and you can't slam the door in its face. So maybe we didn't win. Maybe we just traded the inconvenience of human manipulation for the inevitability of corporate surveillance. At least the Fuller Brush man left when you said no. Your phone never does. Next time someone knocks on your door unexpectedly, you'll know why your first instinct is suspicion. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. For 50 years, a knock on the door meant someone wanted something from you, and most of the time, they got it. Now, the knock is rare, but when it happens, we've learned. We don't answer, and if we do, we don't let them in, because we remember. Even if we weren't there, the Fuller Brush man is gone. But the lesson stayed. Trust is earned, and a stranger at your door hasn't earned it yet.